This is the most useful scale for every genre of American music. I'm talking bluegrass, blues, country, and rock. And I've never heard anybody say a name for it.
It's kind of crazy. Like you're blowing my mind actually a little bit with how we have failed to name this thing in our history.
Okay, so I've got this quote from Bill Monroe that I read years ago. It says, "Bluegrass is a good school for any music." Okay? Bluegrass is a good school for any music. Hayes, take that away. What do you think about that?
Oh, man. I have so many thoughts. First off, I'll just say that I 100% absolutely agree with that statement. As someone that plays multiple genres of music and started primarily with bluegrass, it was the key that unlocked the door to all other genres for me.
For me too, and I felt like because I had a foundation in bluegrass, that first of all I had some technique, and so the technical challenges of most things were I could pretty much handle. There are some styles that I got into that I didn't have the chops for, but for most things, bluegrass gave me a lot of chops. I think also, would you agree with this, like the learning to play with people, so the interaction?
At 100%, right? Because that's one thing that I feel like is proprietary to bluegrass and few other genres, like jazz maybe, where there's like a jam culture, like a social culture surrounding the music. Because a lot of styles, you always hear these criticisms of the bedroom guitar players, like the rock shredders who just sit in their room and learn all these licks and they don't know how to play anything with anyone. It's because rock isn't necessarily that social kind of network that bluegrass and whatnot is, right?
Well, and you need space. You need permission from your landlord. You need permission from your neighbors. By the time you get the drum set in there and the guitar, the amps, and the old garage band and stuff like that. Meaning not the program, the actual garage when you were in your garage playing rock and roll with your friends.
We're dating ourselves.
But bluegrass, you don't need electricity. You can show up with the instruments, play in a park, play at a wherever, it's somebody's living room. It's just a lot easier for that to happen. So, and then I think you learn to play together. You learn when it's your time to play, when it's your time to play backup. You learn to play behind a singer. You learn to mix yourself, with the group, when I'm playing too loud, when I'm playing too soft. If you're playing with good people, you learn how to play in time, you learn how to play in tune, you learn how to sing harmony. I don't know, anything else? Just a ton of things.
Well, something that maybe encapsulates some of what you're saying too, I think the reason that bluegrass was so instrumental in unlocking those doors for me is that it's a virtuosic representation of basic music theory. Like you are taking the most simple musical building blocks, like a 1-4-5 out of a key, and doing literally everything you can with it. 3-part harmony is derived from the chords. The solos that you need to take are derived from the chords. All of that kind of stuff, right? So it requires, whether or not the guys could name a root third or a fifth, if you can play bluegrass well, you have an intuitive understanding of that stuff that we're talking about.
And you're also holding it. Everybody thinks music theory is something you have to go learn. You are holding music theory in your hand. Here is a root third and fifth. Hello everybody, how do you do? We're here to play and sing for you. I mean, that's music theory, right?
Totally.
So the first lick I ever learned was a Bluegrass G-Run. It goes like this. And then it was out of the Happy Traum Bluegrass Guitar book, which is still a great book. And then he shows you how to do it in C. And he shows you how to do it in D. And he showed you how to do it in E. And he showed you how to do it in A. And then at some point, I don't even know how I learned this. I learned that I could do it kind of going up the neck and do it. And so my foundation for bluegrass soloing was a G-Run. Tell me, Hayes, because I think I know the answer to this. What is that scale called?
Oh, what is that scale called?
What is that scale called?
Man. Well, there are so many names for it. You know?
Is there now?
Yeah.
Let me hear one.
Well, one.
Because I never heard a name for that scale.
Yeah.
Have you heard a name for that scale?
No. So colloquially, I've come up with my own term over the years. I call it the bluegrass scale because
The bluegrass scale.
yeah, it's kind of like a major pentatonic scale with an extra note in there, right?
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
So, and I heard it. It took me years to hear somebody say a name for that scale. And like, I went to college.
Same.
Right? And I'm like, this is the most useful scale for every genre of American music. I'm talking bluegrass, blues, country, and rock. And I've never heard anybody say a name for it until one day I was watching Scott the Piano Guy in my pajamas. And he had a guest on there, and the guy called it the Happy Blues Scale. And I was like, that's what it is. And because it is the same notes as a minor blues scale, but it's the happy version.
But you're starting
right?
on the G, not the E, right? Yeah.
So you said it's like a pentatonic, and everybody kind of lives in pentatonic world right now. So you said it's like a pentatonic. Okay, I'll buy that. And you said with an extra note. What is the extra note?
Yeah, the extra note is the flat third, the
Flat
linchpin of good music, right?
The linchpin of I think I would almost go out on a limb and say the linchpin of American music.
I agree.
Is the flat third. Because when we talk about 20th century American music, which to me is like, kind of starts with ragtime and goes into country, goes into blues, goes into, and maybe some of these happen simultaneously, goes into rock, goes into bluegrass, and jazz is obviously in there too. I hear that so often. And, you know, a lot of times when we think about these different styles, we think about, the grooves and the clothing fashions and the way the guitars look, not realizing that these styles are just cousins. And a lot of times they're played by the same people in the recording studios.
Oh, isn't that crazy, man? Like, dude, one of the most mind-bending things that I ever heard about, because you mentioned rock and roll as having this, Bill Haley and his Comets, like, you know, one of the first early rock and roll groups, they were a Western swing band. Then rock and roll happened, and they were like, oh, we got to jump on that train.
There you go. I didn't know that. I've got this G-Run here, and like one of the first things I discovered, okay, so I'll put it in E. And you mentioned this song, so you play it, but... Okay, so that would be, you know, I call it a G-Run, but it's in E, so I don't know what it is, but it's got that flat third. But you came up with Hot Rod Lincoln.
Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, what is that? It's got that flat third. And the flat third, I tell people, like, it's magnetic. It has direction.
Yeah.
It's not just a note that is by itself. It has direction. And I term it, I say flat third can go up. I say flat third can go down. But more often than not, it goes up. And you called it, what was your term that you used in your video? You said, like the rule of blue thirds, I think is what you called it.
Yeah.
And it's not like a rule, like, these music, we call them rules. They're not rules like, you know, you better do this or else.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like what happens in the style.
Yeah, I would almost call it like, if I could go back and rewrite that title again, I would almost call it the law of blue thirds, but not like a legal law that's something that needs to be adhered to, but like a scientific law. You know what I mean?
And I'll be
like
honest, that's a long title.
Yeah. Well, we went to college. We have to prove it, right?
That's true. We did went to college. That's my journal entry. No, but it is exactly like that. Okay, so I've kind of come up with some songs that use this flat third, and we both kind of came up with these songs, but that use a flat third, and they're from all different styles of music. And most of them use even that same little scale, if you call it a scale. But they're so different, okay? So the first one, I think it would be like Daytripper. I mean, that's flat third. To me, that's just like a Bluegrass G-Run.
It's the same few notes as a...
There you
right?
go.
The Hot Rod Lincoln thing again. So it's yeah.
And while we're on Hot Rod Lincoln, you know, you got this stupid song. You know, and what's he doing here? He's bending. He's bending the flat third up. So that's flat third is going up.
Yeah.
You know, and then yeah, the rhythm, whatever. I can't even do it like.
That's it.
You know, yeah.
And he does another blue third there. There are literally blue thirds like in every major phrase that Stevie Ray plays in that tune. Incorporates the blue third.
I would say it's in every bluegrass song ever written, probably almost.
Yeah.
In one of the instruments, you know. But here's my favorite example of this because this is an intro to a Lonesome River Band song called Hobo Blues.
Yeah.
And it's a 15-second guitar solo, and the flat third motion of either going up or down occurs 10 times in 15 seconds. And so here's my take on the solo. It won't be exactly right. It was close.
I counted them, dude.
And that just sounds like, what's it sound like? Oh, it sounds like a good bluegrass guitar solo, right? So it happens so much. Okay, so here's an oddball one. Okay, I don't even know if I can play this. We're in the key of B now. Okay. What is that, Hayes?
Sir Duke.
Sir Duke. It's a G-Run.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So, does that mean Stevie Wonder is influenced by Bill Monroe? No. It means they're both influenced by the blues. Right?
Absolutely.
So, it's like Stevie Wonder, like, listening to Lester Flat. Like, I'm going to learn that Lester Flat run.
Well, and I love too, you know, there's this thing that like Lester Flat invented the G-Run, right? You know, this is like a thing that's said in bluegrass. But you mentioned that like ragtime blues and all that stuff, that's like early 20th century music, and they were, you know, New Orleans jazz players. You hear the G-Run all over the place, you know?
That's right, yeah. And my entry, now when I went to college and was like, they could say like studying jazz, I wasn't like a jazz major or anything, but I was in the jazz band and stuff and was learning jazz all that time. And they would steer you really strongly towards bebop, and they would steer you really strongly towards like cool jazz, Miles Davis and modal jazz. And I struggled with all of that music. And it wasn't until I started listening to Benny Goodman that I was like, that I understand. Because the Benny Goodman stuff, he uses that scale, if you call it a scale, all the time. And I was like, he's playing the Bluegrass G-Run. I can do this. Right.
You know?
Okay, so now give me another song from any genre that uses this. Go ahead. What do you got? Okay. Well, and that kind of happens, that steel guitar rag, it kind of happens naturally on the steel guitar, too, because of the slide of the steel. But that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, I got one. You know?
Yeah.
So, Folsom Prison
Folsom
Blues,
Prison,
you know,
yeah.
that solo, flat third up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, give me another one. What else you got? I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds like a Shania Twain song. What was
Guitars Cadillacs by Dwight Yoakam.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Well, and then while you're on the country thing, I don't know if I could play this. Marcel's favorite song.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man.
What is that? Chatahoocie,
Chatahoocie,
right?
man. Brent Mason on that Telecaster. He knows how to use a flat third,
Here's one more. Okay, now this is one of the greatest figures in American music just passed away a couple days ago. Quincy Jones,
Yes.
right? Brilliant, from all the way from Frank Sinatra and Count Basie up through Michael Jackson and well beyond, and widely known for Sanford and Son. So the Sanford and Son theme is there's the flat third
It's
right
like
there.
right in.
Flat third up.
That's
While we're on TV show themes, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Frasier. Oh baby, I hear the blues are calling.
exactly.
That's flat third up.
Absolutely, man.
It's so ingrained in the style, and we never think about it. That's the thing. It's just this is what we grew up. It's just like we never think about why we wear leather shoes instead of wooden.
Yeah. Which we should think about that more.
We should think about that more. Be very thankful for that invention. Okay, what else you got? I know you got more.
Oh man, this is probably one of my favorite examples of it. One of the first things I ever learned on the guitar.
Now, and you know that you've heard the rest of it. It's all, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. So Chuck Berry. So right there, right in the middle of that style, right in the middle of the blues, that rock thing. Okay, so let's say, I'd go even farther back. I'd go to ragtime. What is that?
The Entertainer.
The Entertainer.
Yeah.
The Entertainer.
No, Joplin
Yeah.
was hip to the flat third, right?
And I think a lot of it comes from that, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think
From that ragtime.
a lot of people see ragtime as maybe the kind of like the tipping point where like blues enters American popular music or whatever, right? Like that flat.
Yeah, and the timing, and ragtime has a lot of that. That timing
Yeah.
that's so in country music. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is. I've been a guitar teacher for a long time, so this is one of my least favorite songs to ever teach. Turn it up. No. But then they got that part in the middle, and it goes.
It's a
That's
G-Run.
Bluegrass G-Run.
It's like perpetually descending G-runs, right?
And you take the same band and you got this song.
Absolutely.
So what's that? Give me 3 steps. I
Yeah,
think is
give
what
me
it's
3
called.
steps.
So all the same scale that nobody even knows a name for. So I think that's wild.
It's kind of crazy. Like you're blowing my mind actually a little bit with how we have failed to name this thing in our history. It's like the fabric of all the music we play, but we don't. You could your blues scale, Lydian scale, all these things, and they're like, oh yeah, and this thing that everybody already knows that's the most important thing in in every genre. Like if you
of American
started
music,
with that,
really
musicians
doesn't
would be
talk
so
about
much
that.
better off, right? From the get-go.
Right. Everybody's like, here's 5 pentatonic scales to go learn. What are the notes? Nobody knows. Here's one little thing that'll make you sound awesome every time. Oh, there's Fortunate Son right there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Here's one. Let's see. Crazy.
I love
There you
it.
go.
Yep.
Let's see what else is on there. Okay, here's my favorite out of all of them because this. Now I am a conspiracy theorist. You know this, right?
Absolutely. It's the only reason I'm here.
So, why is it that the 2 most important American musicians both lived for a time in Gary, Indiana? And of course, I'm talking about Michael Jackson and Bill Monroe. because Bill Monroe and his brother moved up there to work for U.S. Steel.
Yeah. I always forget
Right?
that it
And
was actually
Michael's,
Gary, right? Everyone always says Chicago, right? But it's like,
well, it's Hammond. I think they lived in Hammond,
yeah.
but it was up there north in northeast Indiana,
Yeah.
and Chicago, right? That's part of that whole thing. So this song, nobody thinks of this as being a Bluegrass G-Run. I mean, this is a Bluegrass G-Run.
It totally is.
That's the same thing. No, nobody ever hears that and say, "Well, I like bluegrass. I like R&B." Never knowing, like, these are the same musics basically, or they have the same foundation, which is the blues. And that is, again, that's one reason. There's many reasons we talk about why bluegrass is a good school for any music, but this is one reason. There's so much language between the styles. So if you've learned bluegrass, you can go and play a lot of other styles because you've got that. But even then, if you just took this as a single thing, like, yeah, that listen for that flat third up, you start to hear it everywhere. Now, we joked about Chevy Malibus and the fact that all bluegrass musicians drive a Chevy Malibu. But when I got my Chevy Malibu, I didn't realize everybody in town had one, right? And when you get a new car, you start seeing it everywhere around town. You're like, oh man, everybody's got, it's in the same color too. You never saw that car before. And it's the same way with this. Once you start hearing it, you start recognizing it in other places. You're like, oh, it's that sound. What is that sound? Well, now you have a word for it. Whether it's Hayes's, the law of blue thirds, insert echo here, or, the flat third up, or which is what I call it, or Marcel calls it, what's he call it? He calls it a dirty third.
Yeah, dirty third, yeah, I think.
Dirty third. Okay, so here's my music history lesson. I've heard the first blues song was documented blues song.
West End blues? Are we talking about that?
I think it was St. Louis blues. Was like
yes, St. Louis.
The first written down.
Yes.
That where W.C. Handy, was in St. Louis hearing what was happening and went and wrote down what he was hearing in the clubs. St. Louis blues is something like this. Now you could just know that, only know that, and you go and play to a bluegrass song like I'm a Pilgrim. You say, well, I am a pilgrim and a stranger traveling through this wearisome land. There's so much language in that one song. And you mentioned West End blues, the same kind of thing, like, it's got that same thing. So that tells me, that's authentic, that's original to the style, and it's something that went all through the 20th century in all those music, honestly, until Nirvana kind of screwed up the works.
I mean, honestly, dude, there is something like, right? Like you see that stuff kind of leave in the late 80s, early 90s, you know what I mean? There's like less of an emphasis on that type of vocabulary, right?
Yeah, at some point, yeah, and that should happen too, where music moves on, but it's always there for us. Mm-hmm. And because that music, we love that music still, that blues music, that blues-based music, we still love that sound, and it's still out there.
Yeah.
And so that's such an important element to it. So
man, you're kind of like blowing my mind here in a way, because like this is information you and I have talked about before and known about, but like seeing all of these tunes just like lined up in a row like that, it makes me I'm gonna completely redo how I teach improvisation, I think, as a result of this conversation. So let's do this, because the people that are watching this that made it to this far are either asleep or really into this. So if you are awake, leave a song in the comments that also uses this technique.
And Hayes and I are going to finish this video with some random riffing on our version of Tony Rice's what's that James Taylor song that he plays? We know it. Here it is. Ooh, I'm doing this one because I want to. And then we'll use that for the, I guess that's where the logo will come up.